Hello and welcome to the KrakCast. It is March 26th, is it?
7th, actually.
27th, excuse me. We're back for another lockdown session here in...
So we're recording this remotely.
Yes, in separate glass boxes so we don't get infected.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh,
yes. It's almost like you're sitting right across from me, Josh.
All right. Yeah,
Such is the audio quality,
Yeah.
the fidelity. Anyway, we are now under increased lockdown, Mike. So the new measures introduced by the government this week are supposed to damp the curve even more. We've had 799 roughly infections at this stage. I realise now my article is a day old.
It's about just over 1,400 right now.
Yeah, 1,400. Stupid virus is multiplying. Okay, so give us a broad update of what we can and can't do now, Mike.
Well, basically now you should technically not be permitted to leave your house unless you're going to work or essential, shopping, pharmacy. You're allowed to walk your dog as well, and technically you're allowed to go out for a walk as well, but only once a day. So if the cop catches you twice, I don't know exactly how they're going to explain that to you.
Yeah, I mean, it has led to
a huge gray area.
These endless debates, online. Oh, I make donuts for a living, and am I a key worker? Can people live about donuts? That's food. I'm getting so sick of this already.
Beer is food, isn't it?
Isn't it awkward as well when you're out taking that walk? Just to get a little bit of air, and you're trying desperately to stay 10 feet away from people. It's a bit weird. There's something a bit rude about it, isn't it? You're all getting out of each other's way and shit. How do you find the social element, Josh? How are you adjusting?
Well, it is kind of funny, this thing about getting out of people's way, because after having, many years living in this city, kind of, walking down the pavement and sometimes being obliged to kind of flatten yourself against the wall because someone will not get out of the way, walking in the opposite direction and is gazing fixedly ahead, pretending like there isn't anybody in front of them. And now you have this kind of, exaggerated courtesy whereby people kind of make, massive and conspicuous detours when they see someone kind of approaching them from the opposite direction.
I'm loving it. It's quiet outside of my street. There's plenty of room. There's no hassle in the store, and I'm grabbing something to eat.
Mikey, loving the apocalypse. enjoying the work from home, Mikey. How's that going for you?
Actually, I'm liking it a lot too. I mean, I work in an office with mainly members of the opposite gender, so I'm getting so much more done at home right now. It's so quiet and peaceful.
Your wife listened to the podcast.
She does, but she also doesn't like people. That's why we get along very well.
Right.
Well said.
Yes.
Okay. So Morawiecki, speaking alongside Health Minister Łukasz Szumowski, said the new constraints on gathering to more than 2 people, excluding families, and a lockdown confining people to their homes except for essential activities, and this is where we go into the grey area, including food shopping, dog walking. Why dogs, getting such preferential treatment? Oh God, I'm going to cause an online shitstorm now. Take care of your dogs. I know they need to be walked. I'm sorry. Funerals cut to 5 people. What's happening, by the way? I don't mean to be morbid, but what happens when somebody dies at the moment? Are their family allowed near them? Is it like...
Well, right now, it's like the funerals procession can only be 5 people. I don't think that counts the priest as well.
What about saying goodbye to loved ones and relatives? Can they, go up to the bed and, shake hands?
At the hospital, or you mean?
Yeah.
I'm guessing no. At the hospitals right now, it's usually separate and usually only one family member at a time.
Mm-hmm. Tough times. Anyway, what are we going to talk about tonight? Stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that everybody's talking about, because for Christ's sakes, there's nothing else going on right now.
Let's start with a blocked shipment of hand sanitizer. A Norwegian company produced a quantity of hand sanitizer for the Norwegian market. And as they attempted to bring said goods, let's pick up the story there, Mike. Apparently, a gang from the government showed up and commandeered sanitizer. Customs
officials and from the tax office basically said, "Yeah, you're not sending this to the Scandinavian markets. We're going to ask that you sell it to local hospitals and healthcare facilities here at a fixed price." Mm-hmm. And this was allowed under the new laws brought in by the government, the emergency laws dealing with this epidemiological state of emergency.
Does it set a slightly, all right, in the broader sense, okay, these are dreadfully, unique times that we're living in at the moment. But, we're hearing all about and we'll talk about it later, the shipment of medical goods coming in from China, the air bridge opening back up. And, isn't there a bit of a principle here that as flimsy and under strain as our global supply chain is at the moment, if something is promised to something contractually, Norwegians need hand sanitizer too. We're all in this together, right? And we've got our shipments coming from here, and we should be focusing on increasing supply, not cancelling contracts and ruining the expectations of customers on the other end who also need these essential goods, Mike.
I mean, I have extremely mixed feelings about this. I mean, my first reaction is I don't like this. I like to think that, Poland is an open market. They've been given employment to people here for years. Taxes have been paid here. Incomes have been paid here. And a product is shipped back to their market. So, over the years, the Polish government has made money off of them one way or another.
Arne Haukland, Norenko's chief executive, said, "I did not expect that they would be so military. 2 of them even had guns in their pockets." Is that a Norwegian accent?
Maybe
No.
they were just happy to see him.
There was one guy in... okay, I'm going to stop with the accent. There was one guy from the tax office, one from the customs, and also the security police. As you said, he had been ordered by the Lublin city authorities to sell it at a fixed price. Josh, you know what I mean here? I mean, I get why they did it. I totally do. They're trying to provide essential goods for the people in Lublin, but how do you feel about this? I mean,
Well, I think it is very, very interesting, and I think this is it kind of points towards a broader question, which I think I've seen some kind of at least brief mention of across some of the media, which is that in times like this, I think even if you're of a kind of libertarian persuasion, there are kind of good arguments to be made where central government is in a position to make kind of broad sweeping decisions for the benefit of the people within that state as a whole. However, the risk comes after the crisis is over, and at what point do you roll back these emergency provisions? Because let's face it, kind of people who are politicians, people who are in government, enjoy having power and influence and don't particularly like having it taken away from them.
So you can see post-crisis kind of gangs of sanitizer hoodlums terrorising depots of around the country.
Well, or even that there may be a kind of like a Norwegian counter-offensive, and then we the famous kind of hand sanitizer wars of 2021.
Yes, a cell will form in the medical studies community and strike revenge at the bandits. Okay, interesting theories. Definitely we need to get out more. There's definitely
we're not allowed to get out more now.
Yeah.
I know, it's like cabin fever, isn't it? Like God, it's like the world has stopped turning. I'm finding it hard to get the motivation to get through this tonight.
Yeah.
What a great thing to say on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's just, our listeners are thinking the same thing.
It's just like empty the fucking prisons and be done with it. Oh, wait a minute, we're emptying the prisons. Mike, discuss.
Okay, well, for the last couple of years, the Justice Ministry has been testing a program here in which they allow people to stay at home, house arrest, something that you've seen in the U.S. for a long period of time with ankle bracelets, that monitor to make sure in a given location. That really didn't pop up in Poland until a while ago. And up until now, it was only certain criminals were allowed to sign up for this program, and the maximum sentence could be 1 year. Now they're thinking of extending that to 18 months or even longer, and for older prisoners up to sentences that would last for 3 years. This is to get people out of prisons where disease can spread and get them at home. Of course, it's also a lot cheaper usually to have somebody staying at home than in a prison. And I think that they're expecting this, that they might...
They're doing this so slowly, though. It's more likely they'll get it in prison, then get released and give it back to the people in the community, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe this is a secret part of their plan as well. They want to kill off all the criminals and anybody who's associated with them.
Yeah, okay. And the border is going to be shut down for another 15, 20 days, right?
Yeah, until the middle of April as well. It's so, nobody who works...
Are we going to, run out of cheese or something?
No, transport and logistics, that's still going on. It's just, slow down a little bit. The problem is a huge number of Poles and, say, Germans and Czechs that live on the border of these countries live on one side and work on the other. Like in Czechia, they have apparently lots of mines which are filled with Polish miners that live in Poland and drive an hour across the border to do their shift there and then to drive back. And now they can't go to work. Same with people living on the border near Germany. And all of a sudden, they're either stuck there or they're at home and they can't earn a living, and they're not being permitted to cross the border right now for at least the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's the measure that was seen as the most draconian, and it seems to have had a degree of efficiency. Would you say? I mean,
well, we'll know that when people, epidemiologists, are studying this years from now.
True.
I mean,
not enough data. You give me the old not enough data line, Mike. It's a crisis. You're gonna have to do without the data. Okay, so. Moving on to our next topic, which is an interesting one. Since our episode where we, gave the good Chinese government a good kicking, we have to admit that the great people of China have got back to their workstations, and all over Europe, like in Ireland, like in the UK, and now in Poland, we're starting to hear these stories that large shipments of PPE, badly needed protective equipment for doctors and nurses, are arriving in bulk from China. Discuss, Mike.
Okay, I feel like I'm being targeted here. Yes, just the other day, a flight came in from China with hundreds of thousands of masks, protective gloves and gowns and other equipment, which is protective equipment, which has been in short supply. Mm-hmm. I mean, that one plane load is nowhere near enough to fulfill the demand right now, but it's it's going to be flying there and back. It's
reassuring though that the great factories of China have kind of gotten back up to a decent capacity and can supply these things. Though kind of it seems to me that maybe the shortages of these things in Europe should be lessening.
Hopefully, yes. I mean, at the pharmacy today, when I walked past here, last week they didn't have any masks. Now they're selling masks at $4.50 a piece, which used to be enough for a box of 20 back in the day. But they're available. They're expensive, but they're available.
Check out our price gouging special only on the KrakCast. Yeah, so Josh, you got anything to throw in there? You look like you're about to fall asleep there. What's up?
No, I'm absolutely fine. Yeah, no.
Not feeling a little under the weather, are you?
Yeah, no, like slightly feverish, tickly cough, but otherwise absolutely fine.
And Dave, how did you know what he looks like? Considering that we're all different locations.
We got the Skype on. Yeah.
Video feed, which you lucky
actually no, we're using the next story, the isolation app. Poland have come out with their own app for. So basically, it works like this, right? If you're told to isolate, you can either get regular visits from the cops, or you can sign up for this app that has, I'm assuming, location, GPS, and for weirdly, you're going to keep giving selfies of yourself. Why do you?
Yeah, apparently a couple of times a day, you'll be asked to take a selfie of yourself at home or wherever you're supposed to be, and you're supposed to send it out within 20 minutes. If not, the police will drive by. To prove that you're, quarantined as you agreed to. I mean,
I suppose it's an easy way of saying, like, you could leave the phone and automatically get someone else to press. I suppose the selfie proves that you're actually in the geolocation of the phone, doesn't it? I mean,
I'll just take a couple of photos of myself earlier, then screenshot that over to the phone, ask somebody. I mean, there's ways around this, but the whole idea is that generally most people it'll be used for the proper reasons.
It's getting hard though, like with the evolution of the angle of the selfie to tell people apart in the bloody things anyway. Now people are like holding it so far above their head to get this weird angle.
They get the duck face and all that. Filters.
Nuts.
No, but actually, it's kind of funny. My wife today was looking out the window and she saw two. It looks like military officers or just basically soldiers with like a paper list, and then on their phone, and then all of a sudden they started waving to somebody across the street from them. And it looks like they were probably checking if people are, because apparently the way they're checking quarantines is calling people and then asking them to walk up to the window and wave to make sure that confirm they're in the building. And it looks like they were waving to somebody in my building.
Well, I was, and I mean, this is, not really news, I suppose. It's just a kind of an observation that I thought I'd throw in there. But I was, for absolutely necessary reasons, I was out and about for an hour or two this afternoon, and in different parts of Krakow. And the thing that I noticed, which I hadn't been aware of previously because I've not really been out very much, is that probably, I would say, about 30% of the very small number of people that you see out on the streets are the type of people, shall we say, they are older men in poor-fitting clothes, usually carrying one or two carrier bags, unshaven, shuffling slowly. I mean,
is this a great time to be homeless or a bad time?
I think it's probably terrible because, I mean, there's no one to get money off. And I mean, I'm assuming that if you're homeless, you're an alcoholic, but that does seem to kind of, more or less kind of correlate. And I don't know. It's I mean, you can kind of
nobody's kicking you out of a doorway at the moment.
You see these sort of like shuffling figures on the pavement, and there is a sense of a kind of rather unthreatening zombie apocalypse,
Jesus, dude. An unthreatening zombie apocalypse. That's quite...
They sometimes smell like they've been dead a couple of weeks.
Oh, God. Okay, that's very cruel. The app also helps connect with the social services or request help with urgent supplies. So that's a nice touch. So it's a two-way communication system, of course, as well. It kind of makes sense, right? We were talking about this last week about how, extraordinary times, the government have taken these powers anyway, so we might as well embrace these technological solutions. It makes sense to me, the app-based solution. I mean, we got to take this seriously. If everyone's doing it, we got to do it. I mean, these people are specifically being isolated for a reason, right, Mike?
So these are quarantining people that have either come to Poland after the borders were closed, because if you come to Poland after the borders are closed and you're a citizen, you're allowed in, but you have a 2-week quarantine period. Or if you were in contact with somebody that was later ruled to be infected with coronavirus, then you also have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And we're talking, tens of thousands of people right now in Poland.
Okay, well, let's try and talk about something a bit different, yeah? I mean, one of our great hobby horses here on the KrakCast is energy and, nuclear, solar. What's the solution to the world's energy crisis, and particularly from the Polish context?
Yeah, and abandoning green policies, I think, would be a start.
Yeah, well, this story was about, the long gestating plans for Poland to finally develop a commercial nuclear plant. It's one of the few countries in Europe that doesn't have one. Did you see this story that I put up, Mike, about the new power plants? Do you think it'll actually get off the ground? I mean, they've been talking about this for a long time. This is one of the big knocks always thrown in nuclear, isn't it? That it takes forever just to plan it, and then...
The problem is, it's like there's a lot of, I would say that there are a lot of interested parties here in Poland, and it's been going on for at least 10 years, at least as long as I've been interested in the topic. The problem is, it seems no government has ever been really willing to pull the trigger on this. And of course, it would be extremely expensive. And I think everybody who's involved is worried just about the public backlash against it. I mean, when they propose a new site that people around there always complain about, will this be safe? How will this impact, house prices here? It's that typical not in my backyard kind of mentality. Right now, the proposition for years now has been on the Baltic coast, just, west of Gdańsk, closer to Germany. There's funding available for it. I think there's generally a consensus in the government that even the opposition would support this to some extent. It's just they don't seem to be able to finally go through with it. Like I said, pull the trigger and just get it started.
It's like decades and decades of bad PR for nuclear, isn't it? It's going to take a lot of overcoming, unfortunately.
But I think the negative kind of public PR for nuclear has really died down last couple of years.
Oh, I think it's not active, but I think it's ingrained in. Certainly, I think I think actually even people in their like early 20s seem to have this kind of residual sense that nuclear, yes, except but Chernobyl. Blah 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 blah, and so it's people are just scared of it.
I always wondered. I was raised in this quote unquote modern society, and I never got that. I mean, I saw this in other people, but I watched the same movies, I read the same newspapers, and I never really got the whole nuclear scare thing. It always seemed like a proper. Maybe it was because it was in The Simpsons, and it never seemed so bad.
Yeah. Well, in The Simpsons, it's probably the most horrifically run nuclear plant. It was probably one of the worst PR disasters in history, Monty Burns, for the nuclear industry. I mean, we all grew up in the 90s thinking, three-eyed fish go together with a nuclear plant, right? But of course, they're talking about getting about 15 to 20% of the energy mix, 6 to 9 gigawatts of nuclear power, 6 plants around the country. It seems like finally this year they're going to finally piss like it off the pot. Is that fair to say? But maybe not with the corona issues going on. But
It's just maybe they'll try to slip it in right now when everybody's thinking about corona,
Yeah, 25 to 30 billion initial spend.
Well, I mean, on a more serious note, it's already being discussed on a kind of European Union-wide basis, the fact that the existing climate policies and the extra financial burdens that they have been placing on households and businesses for a number of years already, in a time of, basically, now economic hardship, and we're likely to see economic hardship for some considerable time to come, that these policies are no longer tenable. And, this is not kind of the usual suspects from the climate skeptic side. This is kind of,
building a network of nuclear reactors will be a wonderful way to stimulate the economy if it does go into a downturn because of coronavirus. And let me just say this, it's time for this idea to have its day, because there's a great benefit on all the waiting around that Poland's done. They've never built a reactor. It means that the very first example they can have of reactor is the newest technology out there. And I think Polish people will quickly see the benefit of it. And, we could quickly build up a large network of them and kind of, have the great benefit of knowing that any nuclear reactor that you build today will last for 100 years, Look on the bright side.
The glowing green, bright kind of light, you mean?
Mike, slandering nuclear after all our efforts to harmonise the world with its magical potential. Shame upon you. Shame upon you. Now, 50 articulated 18-metre electric buses will be provided by Solaris Bus and Coach.
Butch.
Okay, so as anyone who lives in the city knows, Solaris is the main provider of buses. They make pretty nice buses, right?
I mean, it was a Polish-started company that worked for years, and they built up a brand name.
I like them. As buses go, very user-friendly, simple, lots of tech on there, lots of
doors, seats, wheels,
air conditioning, electric monitors. I wouldn't say the seats are comfortable. Let's say they're functional, but you're not on it for long times. So comfortable seats are probably stretching one's expectations. But overall, we're paying 165,435,000 zloty, which works out at about, I think I calculated about 880 grand a bus, euro. What do you think, Josh? Good value?
Well, it sounds about the price for a bus these days.
Electric bus.
Yeah.
And this price actually breaks down. They also have to consider the fact that in that price they have the quote-unquote accessories, so that they have to set up a few charging stations for them and some other equipment that's necessary.
And absolutely, having been on these buses, they have a similar feat of eco buses, which are hybrids. And they were really cool when they were introduced. And the electric filly is kind of nearly the exact same, even better a little bit. So it's kind of this natural evolution of the technology. I like it. I'm a big fan. I like that it's a Polish company. How do you feel about it, Josh?
That's a very good question, and it's one that I'd like to answer in depth. But first, I'd like to talk about how I think that the likelihood of electric transport catching on is really, several years in the future, really, because of the charging infrastructure. And I admit that it is in the short term more plausible with public transport because they can have depots with charging infrastructure. Yes, okay, so I finished.
Yeah, but that's why this is a good idea. And like you say, we're not ready for the whole of the world to go electric, but that's going to happen really slowly anyway if it happens. And we'll slowly be able to rejig our energy needs for it, I suspect. I get what you're saying, currently producing enough electricity to replace all gas guzzlers with electric cars would be impossible. Is that what you're saying?
Well, unless we make wide scale investments in new nuclear technology.
Oh God, our big hobby horse. Yeah. And of course, one topic we haven't really been discussing tonight is the economic packages that are being discussed. We're getting ready for a special episode on that coming up next week, in case you're wondering why we haven't been discussing it tonight. There's a lot of these measures, Mike, that are being discussed at the moment that are really going to filter through in the next week or two, and we'll be able to put a bit of meat in the bone there. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the government finally decides to vote on, because that vote is happening right now. So you guys listening there probably know more than us. I mean, that's a given, actually. But everything from tax subsidies to reduced taxes, ZEUS payments,
deferrals or cancellations.
Exactly.
That's all coming your way. We got a special episode coming on all of that. Excuse me. But at the moment, I want to ring Zygmunt's bell. Won't you ring my bell? Won't you ring my bell?
Who does the bell toe?
Tell us. Tell the ignorant masses what Zygmunt's bell is, Mike.
That's the big bell up on Wawel Cathedral. It was actually under renovation a couple of years back. It had a crack that to recast parts of it. Well, I don't actually even know how you fix a bell in that sense.
Is it like the Pope has fired off the Zygmunt signal into the night sky, and now the bell must ring?
This bell only rings when people die or major like social events. Though earlier,
or coincidentally, both together, like when Lech Kaczynski. All right, yeah. Okay.
Actually, I think it did ring then.
It did, yeah. That was the last time it rung, I think, wasn't it?
And the Pope Francis previously asked that on this past Wednesday at noon, everybody prays, the Lord's Prayer at the same time. And the church here in Krakow announced that they would also ring the bell at noon at the same time in support of, all the people suffering out there in the world.
Yeah, well, that was neatly described. And nothing else to really add to the ringing of Zygmunt's bell, apart from...
Yep. Oh, and they also had to somehow get 12 people together to ring it, which was kind of a problem as well, considering the whole limitations on group gatherings right now.
You can't ring it remotely, then?
No, you can't. Okay. From home, press a button. No, it's a huge bell, and it has like the ropes and everything, pulleys set up, and you need enough people to actually get in there and get it going.
There's got to be a really obscene joke lurking in there somewhere, but I'm not going
Josh, it's a complex system of wheelies and pulleys, okay?
Yeah.
Right. Now, I think you can all join me. I think everybody's been waiting for this moment, to congratulate and welcome Northern Macedonia into becoming a member of NATO, the 30th member of NATO. 30 it is, Josh.
Oh wow, yeah, no, big up to North Macedonia, which has, of course, only recently been able to call itself, Macedonia officially after years of wrangling with the Greeks over their own region called Macedonia, which admittedly, could give rise to some confusion.
I always get confused. The part of Macedonia of Alexander the Great, that's in modern Greece, right?
Yes.
So when you think ancient Macedonia, you should be thinking more Greeks and the area.
Yeah, it's the Greek administrative region now known as Central Macedonia, which I think is why the Greeks were willing to compromise on North Macedonia for the name of the separate country, because previously they tried to call themselves Independent Republic of Macedonia or something like that, and that wasn't good enough for the Greeks. But
anyway, this has been in the works for a while, and it's a genuine non-corona story. I just ruined it. I tainted it with coronavirus, but you know what I mean? Like, this is the one story I noticed this week that has actually pissed.
So let's look at it in isolation.
Finally, I knew it would happen. That you'd finally tell a fucking cracking joke, Josh. Well done. Yeah. And on that note, we're going to leave you in. Seriously, that's it, man. Fucking mic drop. We're out of here. Good shit.